The October Board of Zoning Appeals meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You seated? Roll call.
Ms. Harlan?
Here.
Mr. Berga?
Here.
Mr. Trick?
Here.
Mr. Wolf?
Here.
Mr. George?
Okay.
I move we approve the agenda.
I'll second. Those who are going to give testimony to this court, please rise and raise your right hand. Okay. Any? You raise your right hand, sir. Testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Yes. Okay, thank you. First item on the agenda is BZA 2023-05. Beth and Kevin Brander, 8848 Appleseed Drive, review and a request for a variance to construct an accessory structure within the front yard.
Good evening, everyone. My name is John Huth with Hamilton County. I'm going to go over some items here regarding this case. This is a variance request. This request is for a accessory shed. It would be 12 feet by 12 feet, so that's 144 square feet. This shed would be located in the front yard area on the east side. What's unique about this request, or actually this case I should say, is that it's a double frontage lot. So if you would turn to your map, which was included in the staff report, you could see this parcel has frontage on both Appleseed Drive and Terwilliger's Hill Court. What's also unique about this request is the right-of-way width of Terwilliger's Hill Court is wider than it typically is for public streets. That width typically is 50 feet. This is wider than 50 feet. So if there were to be a narrow strip of land that ran along Terwilliger's Hill Court, and it maybe like in the shape of a panhandle, then it would not be a double frontage lot. And the accessory shed that they're proposing would actually be permitted. So as you can see, it has the two front yards. The shed would be 7 feet from the property line. It would have siding, asphalt shingles. Looks to me like from the applicant submittal would be brown in color. It would have doors that would face the home, and then it looks like it would have windows on the other three sides. Going back to that map, the front yard of Appleseed is pretty obvious what that would look like. The front yard for Terwilliger's Hill Court is actually 50 feet from that property line. So for this shed to comply and not need a variance, it would have to be located 50 feet to the west of Terwilliger's Hill Court. We also notice there is a non-conforming fence on the property that's also in this front yard along Terwilliger's Hill Court. That fence is certainly allowed to stay since it's there prior to the adoption of zoning, likely. However, it would not be able to be modified in any way without getting approval through this board for a variance for that fence. If I understand, the shed would actually be kind of built into the fence, so it would run parallel with the fence, and again it would be 7 feet off the property line. So that's all I have. I'd be glad to try to answer any questions.
I do. The property, you say, is on Twilliger, it's double facing, Twilliger's and Appleseed.
Correct.
Is that band their property or someone else's property, or the division's property?
Does it ban it?
Is it part of like a subdivision? Or is it their piece of property?
Yeah, it is part of a subdivision. I'm not sure the name of it. It's not, I don't believe it's part of the Terwilliger's subdivision. So this property was there prior to Terwilliger's Hill Court being developed. But I do not know the exact name of this subdivision along Appleseed Drive.
So go back to the thing around the 50 feet and Terwilligers and Panhandle and all that. You got to come back again through
Sure.
that, would you please?
Yeah, sure. So as you can see from this map, it is a double frontage lot. It has 2 front yards, which is unique. What's also unique is Terwilliger's Hill Court, the right-of-way. The width of that right-of-way, those 2 white lines, is wider than 50 feet. 50 feet is the standard width of a public right-of-way in townships in Hamilton County.
And what is this one?
Looks to me like it's about 55 to 60.
Oh,
And and
okay.
typically the county engineer does not like the wider right-of-ways. In past subdivisions, they've asked developers to actually bring it to 50 feet, creating kind of a narrow strip of land that would be privately owned by a property owner. So I guess my point was, if this was the standard 50 feet of right-of-way, you would likely have a panhandle or a narrow strip of land that would be owned privately. Therefore, this back of this property would not abut Terwilliger's Hill Court right-of-way, and it would not be a double frontage lot. So I brought that up because it's a unique circumstance.
So how wide is that strip of land?
That strip, well, if the strip of land existed, and it doesn't, but if it did exist, it would be whatever this right-of-way width is, minus 50 feet. I would guess it'd be about 5 to 10 feet wide. If you look up further north on this map towards the cul-de-sac, you can see how there's a parcel of land that brings that 50 feet of right-of-way kind of into view. Do you see what I'm talking about?
Right.
How it
That's
narrows?
the property with the pool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the reason the pool, well, I'm not sure if it's 50 feet from that property line, but that's the reason why that backyard does not have a double frontage lot, because of that parcel along that cul-de-sac. That parcel could very well have extended all the way down to Terwilliger's Hill Court to bring that to that 50 feet of right-of-way instead of the wider width that it has now.
And that was the decision of the developer? And
Correct.
somebody approved that?
Correct. Yeah,
So-
during the subdivision process is when that would have happened.
So what happens is, because of that decision, at least 3 properties that we see here are more or less penalized.
Yes,
Right?
there's actually 4 of them that
Okay,
I
I
can
can't
see.
tell. Okay,
Yeah, to
4
the
of
north
them
and 2 to the south.
are penalized because the developer moved it, I'm not sure what direction that is, west, too
Correct.
far to the west versus making the lots on the other side a little smaller to allow for the appropriate right-of-way.
That's exactly right. And actually, if you look at the map towards the very bottom to the south, you can see where, if you count 2 parcels down from this one, you can see a white line which creates that small little panhandle, so that's privately owned. So that's where it increases in width. And then you go 4 lots up and it decreases back in width. But everything you said is exactly right. It kind of penalizes these 4 properties. It gives them 2 front yards, which is very unique.
And in Symmes Township, from what I understand, that is unique. We do not have a lot of that situation, is that correct?
I believe that is accurate.
The, so, I'm trying to understand, there are 2 front yards, but the front of the house faces Appleseed.
Correct.
So isn't that the front?
That is one of the fronts. Correct.
That would be a major front, wouldn't it?
Yes, but since it has frontage on 2 streets, it's considered to have 2 front yards and no rear yard. 2 front yards and 2 side yards. No rear yard. I mean, it does have a rear yard, but that'd be 50 feet back from Terwilliger's Hill Court, because 50 feet is the front yard setback.
But usually, your front door is your front.
Absolutely.
Isn't that, in most cases, your front door, your mailbox is in that front on Appleseed?
A more common thing is a corner lot.
I'm just
where
trying
you-
to
where you
define.
have
Yeah,
front
no,
doors.
I know what you're
That's all.
saying. No, I know what you're saying.
I'm just
I
trying
think
to.
you're trying to understand it. I just want to say that, from my knowledge, I mean, corner lots are where you run into the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because their mailbox is on one side and their street address is actually on the other street. So,
But I think to answer your question is, from a practical standpoint, the front yard is on Appleseed. but from a technical standpoint, in terms of the ordinances for Symmes Township, by definition, you have 2 front yards.
Correct.
So there's a technical issue and a practical look at this.
Yep. And just for a matter of fact, if that was truly a rear yard, this shed, I believe, could be 3 feet from that.
Right,
property line. And
if
they're
it was
proposing
normal.
7.
The hedge that is behind the front yard that is facing Terwilligers, who owns that hedge area?
Some of that is public right-of-way. So I assume Terwilligers Hill Court is a township road, because it's a cul-de-sac. And then a lot of that vegetation is also owned by the appellant. If you look at the aerial photo with the red line, you can see that red line kind of splits it about in half. So some of that's privately owned and some of that's in the public right-of-way.
At least the canopies are. We don't know where the trunks are.
Correct. And cages is not always super accurate when you look at an aerial photo and overlay property lines. It can be a little misleading at times.
When the staff did their report, they did it from a purely technical standpoint. Here's the ordinance, here's the measurements. At the end of the day, 35 feet is not 50, therefore it's out of compliance. Is that correct?
Yeah, to bring that shed into compliance, it would have to be moved back another 43 feet towards the home. Then it would be technically in the rear yard.
Okay.
Could you define for me what is an accessory? How would you define an accessory
So-
shed structure?
Sure, absolutely. Properties have a principal structure, which is usually the home.
The home.
And then accessory structures are accessory to it. You have to have a principal structure to have an accessory structure. Those include sheds, like the appellant's request here, the pool that you see on the map, detached garages, play sets, and there's many, many more.
Thank you.
But you cannot have an accessory structure on a single-family parcel of land without a principal structure like a home.
Who is responsible to take care of the land that's in the township, I guess?
I believe that'd be your maintenance department?
Would our maintenance department trim it? And-
Yeah, within that public right-of-way?
Or is that the homeowner's responsibility? That's what I'm trying to find out.
If it's in the public right-of-way and it's a township road, which I believe it is,
Okay.
then it would be your township maintenance department.
Okay.
It doesn't look like it's been trimmed for many, many.
Well, that's not, yeah, that's not the issue though.
Okay.
Is there any cap to how tall the structure?
Yeah, it's well under the cap. I don't know that dimension off the top of my head from the code, but it's well under the size permitted.
I think
and
it's
well
13
under
feet.
the height,
13 to the gable.
yeah. It's quite smaller than what it could be.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else?
No,
Any other questions?
maybe later.
We might call you back. We might call you back.
Anyone else? Anyone going to speak for? You- No. You're the homeowner, right?
Yeah,
Come on up and state your name and address. please.
yes. Kevin Brandner, 8848 Appleseed Drive. I guess as you guys might have guessed, I did not know when we purchased the property that it was dual frontage. Embarrassingly, I guess, I didn't even realize we owned more property beyond the 6-foot privacy fence that was mentioned in the report. And then, you're playing in the backyard with the kids, the ball gets hit over, you have to hop over the fence and you see, oh, there's a second fence back here. What's going on with that? And so, we've been able to open up the gate or we put a gate into that fence. So I don't know if that was permitted or not, I guess, but, put a gate into that fence so we could access that back part of the property. I've cleared a little bit of it out because it was completely overgrown with honeysuckle and other sort of, invasive species that was, not great, poison ivy and that kind of thing. So I cleared a lot of that out, not all of it, and there's still more of that kind of underbrush and growth that is in the other side or the right-of-way side of the Terwilligers Hill Court side. So, you know, family's growing, we would just like to have a little more storage, would like to put a shed, applied for a permit, not really thinking too much about it, and then ran into this double frontage issue, but based on where we could put the shed, you know, deep into what, you know, we would normally consider our backyard, it pushes it basically to the middle of the backyard, taking up more, you know, green space than we would really prefer. So we'd like to use some of that space that's behind the fence, and as you mentioned, we plan to build the front of the shed into the existing fence, just so the gates to the shed basically open up at the same kind of latitude as the shed. So that's the plan there. You know, it's simply where we want to put it. Why we applied for a variance is just to be able to better use the property. We'd be willing to plant arborvitaes or some sort of privacy hedge along the backside of the property if that helps our case in any way. It is pretty overgrown in that right of way, but if they happen to trim it or whatever the city maintenance decides to alleviate any concerns, we would be willing to do that. So I can throw that out there for what we'd be willing to do. I would be willing to also make it smaller, though I think it complies to what would be the traditional code without having to get the bigger size building permit, if that helps as well. But I felt that a 12 by 12 shed was pretty reasonable. As mentioned, it's not up to the max height of typically allowed and everything. So you know, that's our plans, and that's what we were thinking, what we're hoping to get accomplished today. Thank you for your consideration. Yeah.
When did you buy the house?
2019.
Have you talked to your neighbors?
Yes.
And?
Carolyn here's gonna have a concern with the sheds, just seeing it from her front porch. She's directly behind the house. Dee is my neighbor to the north. He would prefer I put it back into the back, just because my next best location that would be permitted is 5 feet off of their fence on the north side of our property, and they have a nice 3 seasons room and would be overlooking our shed. Plus there'd be some concern about a large oak tree I have at the end of my driveway, putting a shed directly under that and potentially disturbing the roots when I put it, so I would prefer not to have to do that as well. And then I've talked to the neighbors on the other side. They were unconcerned.
Appleseed runs north-south?
Correct.
I have a question on the construction of it. My neighbors have sheds in their backyard. I've never seen a shed like this. Like I say, I've never.
I think
What are
the
four posts
drawing might be a
for?
little bit confusing because of how the footers look. Those will be under the ground.
Would they be flush to the ground?
Yes, they would.
The shed would be flush to the
Yes.
base of.
Yeah, I think
Okay,
that.
because it's
Yeah,
misleading.
so
like
I
that.
mean, I plan to just build the shed myself. The drawings are rudimentary and not great, I would say. But yes, it'd be, you know, standard flush to the ground. Those are just trying to show where the footers of the support would go.
Okay.
The height of the fence that runs along Terwilliger Hill Court
I
is
think
how
it's a 6
high?
foot.
I'm sorry?
6 foot privacy fence. I mean, if I had to, I'd be willing to take it down as well. I'm not married to it. I prefer the shed rather than the fence, if that's all.
Is there a fence along the north side of your
No.
property?
No.
Have you considered, according to the diagram, it's 7 feet from the property line? Have you considered moving it closer to the main house? Now, I know you got the tree there, I understand that, but have you looked at to the other side, closer to the house?
So the other side of the yard, the south side of the yard is just open yard, so it would just kind of be planted 5 feet off the neighbor's fence to my south and then into the yard, kind of awkwardly, with nothing else around it. Would be the reason we prefer not to do that. Because the 50 foot regulation puts it pretty far into the standard backyard.
Well, I know that vegetation would probably do a very good job obstructing it now, but 4 months during the winter, that's gonna be wide open. And the people on Terwilliger's Hill are definitely going to be seeing it.
I mean, they see our houses too during that time.
Does anyone else have a shed in the neighborhood?
So I think our neighborhood's called Montgomery Point, for what it's worth. It's what the sign says when you pull in. There are other sheds in Montgomery Point. Our neighbor directly across Appleseed Street has a pool house next to her pool. Walking around the neighborhood, there are other sheds.
Any others along Terwilliger Hill?
I don't think so. And not in any of the properties that are dual frontage, for sure.
Any other questions?
Not right now.
I was doodling for a second. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else going to speak for? Anyone here to speak against? Stand up, state your name and address, please.
Carolyn Gray. I live at 11180 Terwilliger's Hill Court. I'm right across the street. I have a problem with it because right now they've already started clearing some of that brush, and there's like a hole, and I look at the privacy fence, their swing set, and their backyard. My property value is gonna go down if I'm gonna be looking at a shed right on. Now, I don't have a problem if they plant arborvitaes. If they're able to plant, or Symmes Township will aid in planting arborvitaes that fully cover, and you can't see it in the winter or the summer. But, I mean, quite frankly, that whole strip along our street has not been taken care of. Symmes Township hasn't done anything. There's dead trees, there's dead branches. It's really been avoided. I've been in the house for 21 years. And when I first moved in, Symmes Township, they would come and cut it, they would come and trim the trees. I don't know what's happened, but, that's my concern. I really don't want to look at a shed out my front door.
But you won't see a shed, you just see the top portion of it, right?
I'll see a shed. I mean, right now, because
see
of
the
the
wall?
stuff that he's taken out, I can see right into his backyard.
So help me then, because I thought he said that there was a fence that went along the back side parallel to Terwilliger Hill.
So their second fence beyond their privacy fence is like a small, it's like wire. The one that I think you said they can't remove. It's like maybe this high.
It's a metal,
It's like-
metal mesh fence.
Yeah.
I didn't put that in either, I just assumed that's what our actual back property line is.
And then you've got the privacy fence, which will be opened up for the shed.
Oh, wait, okay, hang on one second. What do you mean it's gonna be open? I thought he said the back was gonna butt up against it so that all you would see is the gable of the
The front of the shed would be where the
It-
current fence line is.
It's gonna be where those short wire fences.
Yeah, the front of the fence would go into the privacy fence, the 6-foot wood fence. It will be 7 feet off of that metal fence behind it, and then 17 feet off the north property.
Yeah, so even closer.
So the north property line has the privacy fence.
No, the
east.
east property line.
The east,
Property line is the privacy.
so
Well,
the
north
east that's
also-
directly in front of this lady's house is the privacy fence.
Yes.
Yeah, so they've got their privacy fence.
Right, and then in front of that,
Yeah,
there's a short 3-foot, 4-foot high wire
Wire,
mesh
yeah.
fence. So you actually see a privacy fence there.
oh, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I think that's what was getting everybody a little confused,
Okay.
where all the fences were.
Yeah.
So
Still not clear.
So if he,
So he's not building it on his side of the privacy fence. It's coming out towards where it's coming out as far as that wire fence, right?
No, it's 7 feet from the wire fence.
Towards-
it's 7
Towards
feet,
my house. The back-
towards your
So
house.
is it gonna be on the other side of the privacy fence?
No, the front of the shed will be the front of the privacy fence. It's 19 feet, I believe, from the privacy fence to the wire mesh fence, which I'm assuming is the back of the property. The shed
Now-
will be 12 feet from starting at the privacy fence, and then, so it'll be 12 feet back, and then it'll be another 7 feet to where that mesh fence is.
Okay, I'm getting a little confused.
I am
here.
too.
Can I try to clarify?
Yeah.
Would that be all right?
Yeah, come on,
So,
I'm trying
this
to,
might visually help you. If this is the shed,
right,
and this lady lives over here.
Right.
The privacy fence would actually be flush to the shed.
to the back
So
side
what
of the
she
fence.
sees now is that, yeah.
To
What
the back?
she sees
Front
now is
side.
a 6-foot-high privacy fence. The
Right.
shed would be 1 foot higher.
To the front side or the back side?
Well, I see
The front side, that's
Yeah,
the
my
problem.
understanding
Right.
You're
is
calling
that,
the front side facing her house over
No,
there.
the front side was where the
Face the
shed would
house.
open, and it's a 12 by 12 shed, so it's a square. But the
Okay.
front side where the shed would open would face my house, the back of my house, and so she'd be seeing the back of my shed, but you would be seeing the shed and the privacy fence. That's-
Right.
But I'd be willing to
Okay.
take down the privacy fence if that helps me.
Well, and the
And-
wire, and the wire fence.
Well, the wire fence is not here, I
He
think belongs to the
do anything.
township.
Can't do
That's
No,
why,
it's only on his property, I don't, that's
So-
I think
strange.
it's not. I think there's more.
Well-
there.
Is there?
I think so.
So to alleviate this, okay, wait,
I'm thinking,
go ahead, finish off with
yes,
it.
if you have more to say.
No, I'm done. That was just, I mean, I'm fine if we can come to an agreement where I'm not looking at the shed.
Did I hear that you said if there was more landscaping, like arborvitae's, that you would feel less opposed with the landscaping?
I would be completely okay if I'm looking at landscaping and not a shed. That's why, when he said arborvitae's, we've talked, and I said, maybe arborvitae's are put up, because you can't see
You
through
don't, they
them.
don't shed leaves.
Right, and they don't
Right.
shed leaves.
Could you come back up a
But
second? I got a question for
if
him.
we leave, if the fence stays there and the shed moves closer to your house, now what she sees is the privacy fence, as opposed to you breaking that privacy fence and trying to line up the back of your shed.
Correct, so if I moved it, say 12 feet the other direction, had the back of the shed on the fence, but frankly, the fence has a usable lifespan that is gonna be much less than the shed, and the fence.
I know,
have to come
that's
down.
what I'm trying to avoid, you tying into that fence, because if that
Well, I
fence
mean,
goes
when I
away.
said tying into it, it'll just be even with it, I'm not gonna like build it structurally into the fence.
No, I know that, but you'll never get it to line up. Been there, done that. But
Okay,
We had other people on those too. that
I
wanted
mean,
to testify.
this is opening
Okay.
a lot of
Thank you.
questions now.
Yeah,
We'll call you up if we need to.
thank you.
Okay. Anyone else here to talk against? Please come up and state your name.
Keith Wiesenberg, 11174 Terwilligers Hill Court. So, trying to be, and I'm gonna maybe throw a little bit more qualifying as opposed to quantity. My wife and I completely understand the concept of needing more space. We raised 4 kids in our house. We've been there for 20 years. So, I get it. Yard tools, bicycles. I get it, I understand. We actually wanted the same. It's not like we never had the conversation. Boy, it was more of a, boy, wouldn't it be nice? But then we quickly, just between the two of us, yeah, but that wouldn't be fair to the Robertsons. And the Robertsons live directly behind us. So if we were to put such a structure in our backyard, it would be kind of the same thing. I mean, Robertsons would be looking at the back of the shed from their front door. And they have a drive that goes along my home. There's a kind of a dual drive. So then they'd see the side too. I mean, as they're driving in and out or walking in and out. that's where the conversations ended. I don't know that we were allowed to, we never talked to zoning people, we just wouldn't do it. We just ended the conversation, we felt it just wasn't fair to the Robertsons, never even talked to them about, would you be okay with this? Because we weren't okay with this. So what we did, well, before I get there, so the way I'm looking at this, and I've looked at the plans that came in the mail, and I appreciate y'all sending that, is that, yeah, agreed, Carolyn, out her front door is gonna be pretty much direct on, looking at the back of this structure. For us, on the other hand, we're more of an angle. If you're looking at Terwilliger's Hill Court, we live to the left of Carolyn.
North, on the north side,
I guess that would be, I'm sorry,
south side.
I'm
South
not
side.
direction competent.
Otherwise, you're on the cul-de-sac, you're starting the cul-de-sac.
Okay, yeah,
You're
so,
south. All right.
if you're looking at Terwilliger's Hill Court from our homes, we live on the left side. So we're looking at, you come to our home before you come to hers when you're going down the street. So from our front door, our front windows, we're not really just getting the full-on back, 12 feet by 8 feet or whatever it is. We're getting that, and we're getting the side view as well. So that, to me, it's almost more square footage that we're looking at, or linear footage, I should say, from our home than even from Carolyn. So, and I do agree with her. I think that it would affect property value. And yeah, when the leaves come down, again, another reason is we didn't build a shed, because there'd be part of the year the Robinsons might not have hit it or been able to see it. But my gosh, when the leaves come down, you see everything. So the way we mitigated this, again, we had 4 kids. Totally get it. But what we did is we just went vertical on almost everything. And I'm not suggesting that they haven't. But years ago, I researched, went to Menards, Lowe's, Depot, did the whole thing. And for us, this worked out. I mean, with all the rakes we had a lot of kids, so everybody had a rake, right? So you get extension bars, that's what we did. We got extension hooks where you put like 5 rakes on a hook. Now they can come down. I mean, it's just amazing what you can do. Even our power tools, the blowers, the trimmers, I have those on hooks on the walls. I have a whole wall of made out of wood, but I made it myself, and you can hook things onto it, so I can put other tools that aren't even yard tools, like routers and saber saws, joiners, things like that I put up just to keep things off the floor, because I understand the sanctity of the square footage of the garage. You want to get the cars in there, and there's not a lot of room for that when you have all the yard tools and bikes and all that kind of stuff. So that's how we mitigated it. So again, not suggesting that hasn't been done. But that's really all I have, unless you got a question.
Now, I have a question for you. Would you oppose if this building was made out of unbelievable, beautiful brick, as opposed to wood siding?
Yeah, same reason. I mean, it's not natural to what's along the street. It's all of a sudden you're driving along, it's green, boom, brick. Or
And what happens if they had green in front of it, that when you're driving down the street, that's what you see?
I'm not really plant competent, but what Caroline said, as long as that was maintained and they were large enough, I think that's what you put between our 2 homes.
Yeah.
Took a while for them to grow.
Right.
I mean, they've been there, 7 or 8 years now? And they started off
No, like 5 years.
5 years.
Well, arborvitae, I understand what you're saying. Arborvitae's grow about maybe 6 inches a year, depending on how big, the kind you get. It's like a difference between a pine tree and a fir tree, They grow at different rates. No, I understand what you're saying. I'm just trying to get a balance of what the neighbors across the street can accept possibly versus, no, it's ugly and I'm not gonna do it. That's why I asked that
So
question.
the thing that's really out of our control though is, now we've been there for 20 years. And the Bradners have been there since 2019, so 5. What if they moved out in 2 years and whoever bought the property didn't maintain that? I mean, I know that's
Well, maintain.
the probability of that happen, I don't know, but it's certainly possible, and that also concerns me. It concerns us.
Maintenance can be written in our whole review, that they have to maintain it in good repair. I mean, that's simpler than making sure, because this board, we tried to bring the meetings of the minds together, trying to discuss it, to work it through. We're not, I want to say a staunch board, it's A, B, C, D, that's it. We try working in, because we're neighbors here too. We want to make sure that we can get it to work together in some format, a give and take. And that's why we're asking all these questions, trying to understand your viewpoints, what the applicant's willing to try to do, so we have a comfort level.
I do have a question, from something before. Are we now talking about the back of the shed being at the privacy fence line, or the front of their shed being at the privacy fence? I got a little
The
confused.
front are the front 2 doors that'll be facing their house.
Is that
The back side, or whatever you want to call it, will have, there's windows on the other 3 sides, right?
There can or can't be back there.
Well, I
There
think-
are on the drawing.
On the drawing, there is one window on every side. So you'll see the building with a window.
So again, are we, at this place, the front of their shed lines up with their privacy fence?
Correct.
Or the back of their shed lines up with their privacy fence? To me, it's different. It's different by 12
The
feet.
front is what he said.
The
Okay.
front
Lines
is
is
the
gonna line up.
double doors
Okay,
that'll be facing their house. What we're trying to figure out now, in a way, at least in my mind, is trying to figure out where that back side is that you folks would be seeing either from a side, you coming to it, or looking straight on.
right. And that's the way I understood it initially, but during this conversation, I got a little confused, and
Right.
it sounded
So
like
We all did.
maybe the back of the fence was actually, or the back of the shed is actually gonna be at the privacy fence.
No,
Wouldn't have as
that-
much problem with that.
I mean, that's what we're trying to figure out ourselves, but that's why we're asking all these questions. And in the
Sure.
beginning, we had that same concern because it started getting a little convoluted to us. So we were asking those questions.
Yeah.
And it's my understanding is the front side of the shed, that I'm calling the front side of the shed, faces their house. It has the double doors that open up, so they have access to it. It
And
won't
it's
be- it won't-
consistent with the privacy fence, is what you're saying.
We mean consistent.
It's at the front of the shed,
Is,
starts at privacy fence.
Yeah, they're on the
That's-
same plane.
comes
They're on the same-
lower
Right now,
Correct.
right now, that's what he would like to do.
that's what I understood
But what
initially,
But what we're trying,
because
but
that
what
would
we're
take
trying
12
to-
feet off of it.
we have to do is have a discussion, find out what they're willing to accept, and in relationship to the privacy fence and things of that nature. We have to try figuring this out now. But we know now where it's gonna be, how it's oriented. We do know what your 2 concerns are, as how you would like to see it, and we're gonna see what we can do to possibly come up with a solution that you'd be happy with, and the homeowner will be happy with, and come up with an amicable solution.
Not us.
That's all.
So I have a question, so how many feet, because if it's 12 feet by 12 feet, how many feet from Twilliger's Hill Court, the street,
Actual street?
does the shed, the back of the
That's-
shed, how many feet in is the back of the shed?
7 foot property line, and there's probably another 15 to the edge of pavement. Actually 20, because Coolidge's kind of closer.
So it's like really close to the street, it's pretty close to the street.
Not really, because technically they can almost put it right on the fence line. But we wanted to see what we can do to make that,
On the little fence line, is that where the property goes?
you know, that's, you know, we need to talk this thing through ourselves.
Okay.
So to me, it's a whole different discussion if we're talking about the front of the shed being on the same plane as the privacy fence, as opposed to the back of the shed being at the same plane as the privacy fence. That, to me, it's a
Well-
whole other discussion.
One side of the,
It wouldn't be.
right now,
Still be an issue. I would still have to apply for a variance.
No, you may, but I mean, I wouldn't have a problem with that.
right now, the client is asking for either the front or whatever you want to call it, and I would call it the back of the shed, equal to the plane of the privacy fence. It's built, the 12 feet is going from the privacy fence into their
Well, then I don't
yard.
have a problem with it. If we're talking about the back of the shed is consistent with the privacy fence, if that's what we're talking about, I don't have a problem with it.
That's what he's telling us it's gonna be.
Well,
No.
that's not what I applied for. I
That's
applied
not
for
what
the
it
front of
is.
the fence to be the front of the shed.
Let's, yeah,
So you're pushing it even closer to the street.
let's move
It's
over.
the back of the shed would be 7 feet from my property line, and then in the right of way, it's another 20 feet, so it'd be 27 feet to the street.
Okay, now I'm totally
Okay.
confused.
So here's the shed,
Right.
this is their privacy fence.
Okay, that's, okay.
This is the wire
I got it.
fence, so
I got
this
it
is
now.
7 feet to the wire and
Okay,
then 20.
I was
All right.
making this
The
assumption.
doors facing.
That the privacy fence.
Okay, is there anyone else against? Let's get them
Yeah.
off.
Let me see. Is anyone else here to speak against? Okay.
Well, you gotta come up here.
Did you, were you sworn in? I was not. Okay, stand up, raise your right hand. Testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Step up. State your name and your address.
Dwight Ellingwood, 8840 Appleseed Drive. I'm the neighbor immediately to the north of their property. And that fort here in favor of this element, of this proposed accessory building, kind of where it's at. And again, I think from my opinion, I had that same issue of the dual backyard. Didn't know that when we bought the house back in 1997. And that to it out there, and I would agree that I don't know if to call it an easement, whatever that strip is, that 20-foot wide strip, ever since the tornado has not been, tornado was probably the last time that it was really taken care of by the township. Since then, it's kind of overgrown, and I do a walk there every day and kind of stuff too. It's unbelievably hard, particularly at this time, to kind of see through all the growth and stuff that's there, but I appreciate that when the leaves fall and stuff to it. I guess my concern would just be if you move it too far into the yard, and that's why I'm so much in support of what it is that they're doing. Now you're kind of coming up into what I'll call my backyard or second front yard, kind of an issue for that aspect of it. I think where it's at right now, obviously from our property, we wouldn't see it necessarily, probably see the roof and stuff when the leaves came down in that too. But I just want to say that I would encourage you to kind of come up with a mitigating strategy as opposed to, the strategy is let's just move it farther into the yard there.
Let's be real clear, that's not our job.
Oh, no, I
We're not here to
understand.
solve the problem. This is for you guys. All we do is look at it from the ordinance standpoint. So,
No, and I appreciate that. I'm
Yeah,
not suggesting
it's not our
anything
job.
anything otherwise than that. I was just kind of following the comments before. So let me just kind of leave it at that. But again, I think it's an interesting element because you've got that 4 houses with the double backyard that will continue to penalize everybody over there when the Terwilligers development was developed and kind of put the 4 lots, their house as well as ours, that we've been in for 23 years, 26 years now, I guess. A little bit of a penalty for doing anything in our yards. So
Okay.
just keep it at that.
Can we call Mr. Brandner back? I'm gonna ask him.
Yes.
Okay, so you've obviously got a very difficult situation here, but it sounds like you've got willing neighbors to make this work for you. Okay, what I would like for you to do is tell us and them, what is it you're willing to do to help address these issues and concerns? Because at the end of the day, if we are to give you a variance, we want to make sure it's a win-win for everybody.
I'm willing to plant arborvitaes down my back property line to hide them. It's gonna take some time for them to grow up and fill in to fully obscure the shed. I think we have to understand that. It's gonna take some time, but I'm willing to plant and create a privacy hedge on the inside of the metal fence that's on our property. There is still a lot of overgrowth that could potentially cause some problems. There's a lot of vines back there. I've trimmed down because there's big old growth trees both in my property and in the easement of the right of way that had vines growing up them that I cut down so that the trees could live, and there'd be more things like that that would require maintenance from the right of way side to make sure that those things didn't get engulfed and killed, and then we're back to replanting on that kind of whatever timeline that took. But I'd be willing to maintain and keep the hedges nice, and everything on my side of the fence is private, I guess, from hiding the shed as possible.
Is that something that you folks would be amenable to?
I mean, I would, but I feel, I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but I kind of feel that Symmes Township should do something as well, because like I said, that whole Symmes Township owns X number of feet along that way, and it has not been taken care of. And I guess if he does plant arborvitaes, is it gonna be an issue because of all the vines that are gonna continue to grow, and honeysuckle and so forth?
Okay, with all due respect, you would have to, y'all would have to get together and contact the maintenance coordinator for Symmes Township
I was
to,
just trying to help some of the
Yeah.
costs about that,
No.
but I would
To
be
help
okay
them.
if something was planted. I mean, another concern is those 4 other homes are now gonna be able to, or they may all want to build sheds.
well, he would be
Along
the
that whole
standard.
strip.
He would be the standard.
Well, but they all have to come before us
No, I
as
know,
as a
I know.
conversation.
But
Right.
precedents would have already been
But
set.
the precedent's gonna be set so that our nice little private street is turning into, looking into backyards and sheds.
Or a row of arborvitae that's 300 feet long.
Yeah, and that would be perfect, that would be great.
Okay. Anything else you want to say?
Yeah, I mean, it just, I guess it's somewhat on us to have not known that the dual frontage, but as you can see from the drawings, it's only a select few of the houses, and we would be within zoning variation if it wasn't for the dual frontage, so that's just what I'd like to close with.
What color are you looking at, may I ask?
Brown or dark gray. Brown.
Something that would be compatible with the environment, and nature, and the foliage, so it kind of like blends in?
It would be,
Nothing wild or bizarre?
correct. It would not be wild or something.
And you would maintain it?
Yes.
Would, the arborvitaes, you're talking about growth, you know, you can get arborvitaes at any size. You can get the tall ones where, boom, you can get the immediate effect after a season or two, or you can get the tiny ones. What are your thoughts about that? I was just curious.
I don't know anything about them. I don't know what I can commit
We're
to.
not, I don't think we're allowed to.
Well, we can
Stick-
encourage them to look into it.
We can encourage certain sizes, but I don't think we could tell them exactly what size, because are you in arbors?
You know, sort of.
Well, I gotta tell you, I'd be much more comfortable with something large, because I think it.
Well, that's
For
something,
lack of a better term, kind of taper starts to taper down.
well, it's something between
You and,
you guys, arborvitaes come anywhere from 2 foot all the way up to 18 foot before you plant them. So I want to stay away from that one.
Well, but I think it's really, you're the decision makers.
We are the decision makers for the zoning,
And
to build, we are to make the decisions based on the zoning code and what goes in there. We could put in recommendations, but we can't say this.
A 2 foot, to me, the Braddock,
It's-
2 foot compared to a 10 foot, that's a whole different conversation. I have no problem with the 10 foot if it wants it, the 2 foot, now I've got to wait 5 years
that's what you need to, we're telling you to talk with them to work that.
Well,
Okay.
we mandate it.
All right.
No, but you can have a conversation.
Okay, this is not really in our privy, so I like to, at this point, close the conversation and go into deliberation. Okay?
Yeah.
This is an interesting one, and the structure itself is within the limits. How close it is to that property line, 7 feet, I'm no concerned about that. And is there enough privacy landscaping that would be obstruct the view all 12 months of the year, not just the summer months and so forth. Those are concerns that I have. And I'm trying to figure out the front door to this structure.
Is
I
facing their
understood it
house.
to be, when you open it up to put in the lawnmower and to put in the bicycles, it's gonna be facing the back of your house, correct?
Correct.
Okay, all right, okay. And you want a window in the back of the shed that's
The
flush,
dwelling put windows on each of the other 3 sides.
but do you need a window?
If
That's-
it helps me not.
Right now, that's what is presented, is a window on each side.
On each side, but what about in the back? On the diagram says there's a window, it shows. the
There's
diagram.
one window on all 3 sides and the double doors on the front,
Okay.
or on the,
I mean, I think the reason why he has windows is to mitigate the need to run electricity to have light in there. We don't want
Here's
that.
light.
Totally understand the windows on the side, I don't understand the window in the back.
that's
That's my opinion.
what's presented to us.
So,
So, I'm looking,
oh my gosh, I mean, if you look at it, it looks like a backyard, okay? And I understand the concerns of the neighbors. I'm not sure I'd be wanting to look out. However, what do you think about if we give the variance with the stipulation with the sufficient appropriate density of arborvitae, requiring a 6 foot? Why 6 foot? Because that's the height of the privacy fence. And I think if you start at 6 foot, it's the privacy fence right now, and over time, that's going to continue to grow, which would then mask. Because I think the height of the shed is probably 10 feet. Okay.
I don't mind going the height, I would say the height of the privacy fence.
Yeah, 6
And
feet.
not, well, what happens if it's a
Whatever
4
it is.
foot?
Okay.
Everyone's saying it's a 6-foot privacy fence, but it's,
Whatever it is.
Whatever
Okay.
it is.
I got you.
because if it's 4 foot, or if it's an 8-foot privacy fence.
I mean, just as a starting point.
Right.
As a gauge to say, okay, Mr. Bradner, if you get the variance, the stipulation would be you plant sufficient density of arborvitaes matching the minimum, the height of your privacy fence, and you maintain them sufficiently. And I think his neighbors will help him with the quality of his trimming and maintenance. Obviously, if they start dying, they'll be knocking on his door.
I know that one. I don't have a problem with that.
Thoughts for that?
No problem with that, anything that will help with the landscape.
Yeah, I mean, I
That's what
think,
you suggest, but,
yeah.
but,
And arborvitae are nice, they're soft, and I think from across the street would look better than, it sounds like you got partially a jungle there, as it is when I hear vines and honeysuckle. I mean, it just can't be that beautiful as it is.
it is, it's a mess.
It's a
And
mess.
how about the rest of his backyard? We're just gonna leave what's there, and,
Well, yeah, I think, whatever.
Are we allowed to ask a question
The
about
No.
the
privacy
conversation
fence?
you're having right now?
no,
Because you brought up something that's new that wasn't discussed.
it's the deliberation,
It's our conversation.
It's our conversation. It's a private basically, it's a private conversation that you guys could hear.
So what do you think of that?
I don't have a problem with that. But I'm still concerned that the back of that shed is really close, 7 foot. Even though if it was a normal property line, you'd allow
From the
5.
property line, and then what,
Then you have that additional
we have
20
another
20 feet.
20 feet to the
of
street.
right away.
Yeah.
So you're talking 27 feet.
It's not 7 feet from the
Right.
street.
Right,
But it's
Which
7
would
feet
be
from the
really-
property line.
yeah, so what he's got is, he's got a 7
That's
foot,
what
And then 27, it's, yeah,
he's got a 7
That's what I
foot
thought.
boundary layer
Yeah.
to
7
plant
feet
the
from the street.
arborvitae, to create the fence, and then he still has 20 feet
To the
Oh.
to the street.
Of this footage along the street that's
Of the
not
gr-
been
of-
maintained
maintained,
by Symmes.
right.
And who knows what's in that? I mean, that's where maybe the jungle is. You know what I mean? So you got jungle, you may not even see the beautiful arborvitae because
Right.
of all the Symmes Township jungle. I don't know. I've not been to the
The
property.
honeysuckle does a good job of obstructing view. It really
Yes.
does.
Yes, and it's very
Okay.
difficult to get rid of.
And the longer you leave
But
it there,
Symmes Township can do it. They did it at Hopewell Park. They got rid of the honeysuckle facing Hopewell.
Yeah, you could get rid of honeysuckle,
Yeah.
it takes a while, but yeah.
well, that'll be their homework
Okay.
project.
So I just want to weigh in on our points, about whether the property can yield a reasonable return or be used in a beneficial way without the variance. It can, however, it's going to be, they kind of got double whammied with double frontage. So that's not a strong factor. Is it a substantial deviation from the zoning code? No, it's not. When you take in all the factors in here, the essential character of the neighborhood be altered substantially? No, because everybody can have an accessory structure, it's just where, and again, they double whammied with that double frontage. But at the same time, I do think that the landscaping would make a huge difference among the neighbors. It's not gonna adversely affect delivery of government services, all that fun stuff. Did you purchase with the knowledge of the zoning restrictions? Probably not the double frontage, since there's hardly any in Symmes Township. And I know realtors are not fans of bringing up all the zoning problems when you're buying a property. However, as you've well found out, we have all kinds of zoning codes. Can it easily be obviated through some other method? Not really. Without sticking it, it seems like whichever way we go, somebody else is going to be unhappy with where you put it in your yard. So I feel like the most reasonable thing is, hey, let's make this work as best we can for everybody involved. Which it sounds like also, I just want to say kudos to you and to the neighbors for talking about it, because when it gets this far, usually the neighbors have not actually talked to each other about it. So we appreciate that from all of you and for being here. Number 7, will the spirit and intent behind the zoning requirement be observed and substantial justice done by granting the variance? Yes, is my opinion. So that's on the record for
Excellent.
somebody somewhere.
So would you like to propose or write a really slow so Luann can scribe the, really slow, the proposal?
I simply want to reiterate what Jack said and a comment that I heard from a neighbor, that this may set a precedent. And if they, we look at each, you may think it's a precedent, but we look at each variance individually on its own merits.
That's
Right.
right.
And that's an important point,
Right.
because it's not a clear check that
And we
this is
got
gonna
plenty of,
happen. If you want to have it, fine, you have to come to us, like you said, and we'll look at it individually on its own merits and positives and negatives, and then we will decide.
Correct.
It doesn't guarantee that just because you folks got it means
No.
that the street, the neighbors down the street will automatically have it too.
Right.
It doesn't work that way.
I'm going to go for it. So I move that we approve the variance as written in BZA 2023-05 for 8848 Appleseed Drive with the addition of landscaping, arborvitaes,
for example.
and encouraging them to be started at the height of the privacy fence. And then there's other things I'm supposed to say, because Brian coached me last time and I have forgot them all.
Oh,
Do you know what they are?
yes, we are,
What I'm
yes.
supposed to say from
Here,
Brian?
if you wanna read
Thank you.
the following conditions, let's make sure I get
Yes.
it down.
Yes.
We need,
The
we
following
need to read
conditions.
the following conditions.
That the proposed, wait,
There's 7 of them.
okay, be
Mhm.
constructed exactly as shown on the plats and plans submitted to the board, that it's not going to be relocated or enlarged without approval of this board.
There you go.
It will be maintained in a satisfactory condition at all times. It's going to comply in all other respects with the zoning resolution and the lawful requirements of the Hamilton County Building Commissioner. And last, the zoning certificate and building permit, if required, must be obtained within 6 months and all work completed within 1 year from the date of adoption of this resolution.
Good.
Sounds like,
Okay,
good.
you knew what you were saying.
Luann,
Thank you,
without
Jonathan.
these last 7 items, could you read back what the proposed solution is? It's the little man with the voice coming.
Ms. Harlow made a motion to approve the variance for the construction of accessory structure in the front yard as written, with the recommendation that arborvitaes be planted to be consistent with the height with the privacy fence.
So that,
Okay.
Is that close?
that's close.
But what I want to do is I want to come back. I want to come back and I want it required, not recommended. I want it
Okay.
required.
Okay.
Required landscaping.
Yeah, required landscaping, sufficient or and appropriate landscaping. Arborvitae could be in parentheses as an example, okay?
Okay.
And at the minimum height equal to the height of the privacy fence.
Maintain landscape.
Yeah,
That's
and
part of
and of
those
course, the
conditions.
owner maintains the landscaping appropriately.
Well, it's part of the standard conditions. You
Yeah,
want me
it is.
to add it again?
No,
Okay,
no, you have it.
because I'll always put those conditions in there.
Yep.
Jack, what about, anything about the color? You feel good about the color?
Yeah.
We can't really tell them what color to paint.
I mean, I like
Or
red,
we,
but
we can't tell, but we can recommend that the
Right.
color be compatible with naturescapes.
No, because
Or
you
I
can
mean-
put a red door on it. I mean, it's,
yeah, I'm not sure I want to.
I don't want to go down that road.
The 80 for 20 is the requirement of the landscape fencing to obscure the visibility from the neighbors. I mean, I think that's the 80 for 20. I think he's taken the testimony into account. He'll do the right thing.
Yeah.
Anything else? Does
Uh,
that sound right to you?
I'll second it. Yeah.
Okay.
ready for a vote? Okay.
You ready?
Yeah.
You are.
Mr. Trick,
Yes.
Mr. Wolf,
Yes.
Ms. Harlow,
Yes.
Mr. Horvath.
Yes.
May you all find your wire fence and meet at it and enjoy a beer or other beverage together.
You have your variance. Okay, with the conditions.
Work with your neighbors.
So are we close, because I have some questions on how this works practically. I mean, I don't wanna, I just, like, there's some big old growth trees that are right along the fence line that, I mean, it would be in the way of a arborvitae fence if that had to go across the whole property line. So there's practical,
I think
That's
you
up to
may,
you.
yeah, you may have to also call Symmes Township, since they're supposed to take care of it, and ask them to get the maintenance department out there to help you clear it off.
The spirit and the intent is to provide a barrier, a visible barrier. How you do that, arborvitae is great. Okay, you may have arborvitae, you may still have that big old tree and an arborvitae on the other side, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure folks would be willing to walk over there with you and work with you. Okay?
And then the timing is, I think I heard it has to be completed within 1 year.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Okay. I just
6 months to
make sure I
start,
understand.
6 months to start, and 1 year to complete,
Okay.
which should be a problem.
No, it shouldn't be, I just wanted to make sure I
Yep.
understood with the rules.
Okay? What do we do?
Thank you.
Chairman Jack, are there any, Chairman Ralph, are there any
Yes.
minutes that we have to approve from the past?
Well, I'm working my way down.
Oh,
Yep.
okay.
Any old business, Lynn?
I don't have
Any new business?
any, no.
What about the minutes from the last meeting?
That's that's the next item.
Oh, is it?
Administrative matters.
Where am I?
We received these minutes. Have you had a chance to look them over? And there's only 3 votes that are allowed to vote on it.
Yeah.
You couldn't do it last month.
I know. Well, the ones from July, were those approved?
No.
Luann? So we have to
We didn't
approve
have a
those?
quorum.
We didn't have a
Okay.
quorum of the people that voted on, that were there
That
for
were
it.
there.
Okay, so,
There's 3 of us right here.
so we could do that, right?
July
If we
3rd.
all approve it.
There's 3 of us.
Okay.
Right.
Somebody's gotta make a motion.
I move that we approve the minutes of July 3rd, 2023.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, now you got your last minutes,
We do?
September
September, yeah.
11th.
I don't have those.
I gave you,
It's all over
you
the
said
page.
that.
Yeah.
Oh, there it is,
Yeah.
July. I thought they were both the same and I had to sign them.
Harlow, Deutsch, and Wolf.
Yep. All right, I move that we approve these as written.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
I move we
I
adjourn.
move we adjourn.
Second.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye. Second, aye. Could
We need you
you
to
just,
sign
I didn't meet you before.